Paper. So, uh, hello guys. Today I'm going to present the mesh sequence, seed-hand mesh sequence from a single Blurry image, a new data set and temporal unfolding, accepted in CVPR 2023. So, what is the contribution of this paper? They provide a blurry hand dataset called Blur Hand that contains natural blurry hand images with accurate 3D ground truth. And they provide a blur hand net for accurate 3D hand mesh estimation from blurry hand images, which achieves superior 3D hand mesh estimation performance on blurry hands. Some examples they provided here. I will go details later. So first of all, how is this blur hand dataset generated? It's synthesized using 30 frames per second version of Interhand 0.6 m dataset. It consists of around 1,000, more than 100,000 training and 34,000 test samples containing single and interacting blurry hand images. So the way they synthesize this blurry images is first they increase the 30 FPS videos to 240 FPS using video interpolation method. Then they averaged the 33 sequential frames that are interpolated from 5 sharp sequential frames like this. Yeah, they're not real, they are synthesized. Yeah. And they assign first, third, and fifth sharp frames from this data set, 30 FPS, as 3D ground truths of initial, middle, and final, respectively, as follows. 3D ground truth, 3D ground truth middle, and 3D ground truth final. So now about the network. It consists of 3 modules, unfolder, KT former, and regressor. I will go details for each one by one. Overall architecture is given as follows. It takes an input image and provides 3 meshes, one for initial, one for middle one, and one for ending. So the first of all, unfolder. Firstly, in unfolder, the input image is fed into the ResNet 50 pre-trained on ImageNet to extract the blur hand features. And then the extracted features are fed into 3 separate decoders. And then to produce 3 sequential hand features. Then the sequential hand features are then projected into dj dimensional feature through 1-by-1 convolution, and they reshaped into 3D heat maps. This D is they call depths, which is 32 in their case, and the J is 21 because there are 21 points, hand points for hand pose estimation. So and then they perform soft arc max operation on each heat map from this sequential features to obtain 3D joint coordinates of 3 temporal hands. The soft argmax is as follows. So this P stands for the location, and this H is the normalized version of the heat map, which is normalized as follows. And then they apply grid sampling on feature map coming from decoder to exploit temporal information effectively.
So why do they have 3 strings?
3 what?
Why do they have 3 decoders?
The reason why they have 3 decoder is they say they want to exploit they want to use the temporal information as well as the if they use on the middle. So this one is for predicting 3 as here 3D meshes. So each one we predict one mesh hand mesh. So we have 3D ground. We have 3 ground truths for each blurry hand.
So is it in the different way?
No, for each blurry hand image, we have three ground truths.
Why?
They say they do it so that they can use the temporal information as this. starting and the ending, they want to predict those two as well, so that they can exploit the temporal information, as they say.
So what is the initial, middle, and final?
The initial is the initial position of the hand, in the motion. The final is the final position in the hand. So from initial to final, so
So it means different frame.
it's different frame, but in a motion. Yeah. So they want to predict the initial and the final and the middle. The middle of the motion, the initial part of the motion, and the ending part of the motion. So that's why they have 3 features to find the initial, middle, and the ending.
How many frames are in? So what is the gap between the initial pose and final?
I think 33 they say, 33 sequential frames. So next is the KT formula. In the KT formula, we first concatenate the 3 joint features we obtained from the unfolder. Then we apply kinematic and temporal position embeddings. For kinematic, we apply along the joints, and for temporal, for temporal position embeddings, we apply along the temporal dimensions respectively, as here. And then we perform self-attention by extracting Koreichi value through 3 separate fully connected layers to transform this features to queries, keys, and values. And then we perform self-attention as usual. It's same as the transformer, original transformer. And then we get the residual features from this FJ. FJ is the combination of 3 joint features from the concatenation of the 3, plus attention from this query key and values. And we get the residual features. And then we perform some MLP as here and add it to, again, skip connection to this concatenated features. And this phi function basically separates the concatenated features into 3 separate feature maps.
Is this used for 3D tools? This is the independent function.
It's 3.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, here we have 3.
So we have unfolder, and from unfolder we take take this and put it the KT formula, and we get these features. In the end, we have J by 3 dimension feature map. Oh, not this one. Yeah. Then we start to produce the man or shape and pose parameters corresponding to sequential hands. So we generate the shape parameter by forwarding the hand feature to a fully connected layer of the global average point. And the pose parameter is obtained by concatenating the joint features and corresponding 3 joint coordinates, and then flattening it into 1-dimensional vector. Then using this flattened vector with its ancestral pose parameters along the hierarchy of hand kinematic tree to forward to a fully connected layer. This is coming from different paper. I suppose what they do is they first predict this one, then they go to next one, and its ancestral pose parameters are attached with this guy, and they predict another one, and then so on. It goes like that, I think. And there's one problem, however, the ambiguity, because since we have 2 endings, we don't know which one is the final ending, which one is the initial ending. For example, in this one, is this motion is extending, or is this motion is folding? So it's not clear what to do in these cases. So what they give as a solution is they backpropagate in the direction that minimizes the loss function. So it has no dependence on the ground truth temporal order. It has dependence on minimizing the loss function.
So do they have ground truths? Do they synthesize ground truths or either?
No, they take the ground truth from the original Interhand 2.6. So
They didn't make that.
no, they didn't synthesize ground truth. It's coming from original. Yeah. So to do that, they propagate in the directions that minimize the loss functions, not by ground truth temporal order. So, and now training loss, how it's determined. First of all, the temporal order is determined on the output of unfolder, and then this order is used to supervise the regressor. So the loss function of unfolder is defined as follows. First of all, for middle one, we don't need to care about the temporal order. We just compute the loss function as it is. But for the ending ones, we choose the minimum of these ones. So this star initial are the ground truths of initial pose and the coordinates, and this is the final coordinates of the ending pose. So we compute the loss for this one, and we compute the loss for this one, and we find the minimum among these, and we choose that one. And depending on that one, the regressor performs either this one, which this star again stands for the 3D ground truth, or this one. So if we chose here as a forward, if this is the minimum, then this one becomes positive, so we perform this one. If this one is minimum, then we compute the loss function according to this one. And this mesh loss function is the L1 distance between ground truths and the prediction of manual parameters, 3D joint coordinates obtained by multiplying joint regression matrix to hand mesh, and the 2D joint coordinates projected from 3D joint coordinates. So now the experiment results. First of all of these experiments are based on the middle of the motions. They don't take the endings for this one. So they take the mean MPGPA error for other methods. First of all, they use two test sets, the Interhand 2.6M and their own that's a Blurry hand. First of all, they trained these methods on the Interhand 2.6, and then they train it on the Blurry hand. And they found out that if they train it on Interhand 2.6, it performs very bad on Blurry hand images. So it means the methods cannot perform well on Blurry hand images. But if they train it on Blurry hand, it performs still a bit worse, but still good enough on Interhand for sharp images, and it performs pretty good on Blurry hand dataset. And their model performs the best among these four methods. Then they try to find out how good is it? Is it fine? Should we use deblurring approach for our Blurry hand images? So they train the deblurring method on the Blurry hand, and then they basically unblur the Blurry hand images. So this Blurry hand plus deblur is the deblurred Blurry hand dataset by a deblurred method. So they compute that again in the middle of motion. They compute the MPGPA and MPVPA, and they find out that deblurred Blurry hand dataset is performing worse than Blurry hand dataset.
What does it Deep blur.
Deep blur, they didn't clarify carefully about that, but as far as what I understood is they use a deblurring method, train on blur-hand dataset, pre-train on it, and then they apply that deblur pre-trained method on blur-hand dataset to deblur the blur-hand images. But that's not good because by doing so, they lose the temporal information of initial and ending, and they focus on the middle one. So that's why the performance is getting worse. And also now I will show some visualization of this deblurring. It doesn't perform well actually on this dataset after training. So like for example here, wait, first, wait, so first some visual comparison. So they compare their model with the other ones when inputting this kind of images, and their ones are doing better than the other methods. And so this is the one. So this is the deblurred image. This is the blur image. As can be seen here, the blurred method cannot perform still good enough to deblur this motion. So that's why it doesn't perform well on this one. And they also did a qualitative comparison on YouTube 3D, which has no ground truths. They just perform qualitative comparison on that. So in this one, this D is the represent network is trained on deblurred blur-hand. So as can be seen here, if we use deblurred blur-hand dataset, our model, this is coming from blur-hand net, our model performs worse than if we don't apply the deblurring to the dataset.
So do they publish these things?
I think they have the code probably published.
Code and how about the data?
I didn't check the GitHub, but probably I think they should. Yeah, let's check. The next, some ablation studies. So they check how each component performs. So they found out that if they apply the blur method, it performs worse than when we don't apply the blur method. So still it means that the blurring is not good for the blur-hand network. And then the next one, they try to get more unfolded images. Like this time they use 3-1. Now they want to use 5 of them. And the 5 of them performs better than the 0-1. But they say that this 5 of them will increase the computational cost, and it's already saturated, they claim. So they say it's better just to use this 3 of them rather than the 5 of them, 5 unfolded hands. And next is the kinematic and temporal position embedding. They find out how this position embeddings perform, and as expected, if they use both kinematic and temporal position embeddings, the error becomes the least. And here's the ablation study proposed loss function. So first they check if they use ground truth temporal ordering, is the error better than using their own unfolded driving temporal ordering? And it's obviously bad, worse than their ones. And then they say that they do not use unfolded driving temporal ordering. They use for regressor. So basically here for this here we use temporal order on the output of unfolder, but this time they use temporal order on the output of the regressor rather than the unfolder. So unfolder works for its own way, regressor works for its own way. So unfolder has its own temporal order and the regressor has its own temporal order. And obviously, again, it performs worse than if we use only unfolder driven temporal order. And they also show some failure cases. So if the image is in low resolution and has so much complex degradations, it performs not good. So
how do frames are inputted to the system?
how many frames? Like you mean to the network?
Yeah, so here how many images are in?
One image,
Just one.
just blurred image.
Blur.
Blurred image, they try to get initial stage of this motion, the middle stage of this motion, and the ending stage of this motion.
But they are using several ground truths.
Yes, and they use initial ground truths and middle ground truths and the final ground truths.
But what is that image is the middle of this background?
This one, this is, they say they first after interpolating to 240 FPS, they get the 33 frames out of this.
This is pipeline
Of generating block. Yeah.
It's different from this.
Now this one is just input image, one image, blood input image. They generate 3D mesh, three 3D mesh constructions. So yeah, that's all.
New features. Nowadays, people are researching towards video-based cognition because previously video classification itself takes a lot of resources. So yeah, GPU was limited, but nowadays could becoming powerful and people gradually research it. Anyway, who's the next?